Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to Friday morning at the Fun House. I got my good friend from Canada, Martin Popoff, on the Zoom, as
How you
always,
doing,
each and
sir?
every Friday. Hello, Martin. How are you
Morning,
today?
morning. Yeah. And what do you have outside meteorologically today?
Well, after 3 days of pouring rain and me sitting in this house sick as a dog, I am very happy to look out the window and see the sun this morning.
Yeah.
It's bright and sunny. I don't know what the temperature is going to be today, but man, I said to my wife last night, it was raining so hard for so many hours straight. It was like a nor'easter or a tropical storm yesterday. It was unrelenting and heavy, and winds and thunder and lightning. I was like, oh, I mean, we must have gotten like 3 inches of rain yesterday. And
Wow.
but it was like 3 days in a row. So it's like, it's absolutely crazy. I don't know what we're going to do with all this water, but I'll have to mow my lawn in a week. That's what's going to happen probably, but I'm not happy.
Nice
about that.
year. Time to get the winter tires off, I think, of the car.
Yeah, that's right. You guys have to do that, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Every year. Yeah.
Jesus. So here we have the follow-up to last week's part 2 obscure album gems, as hopefully all of you know by now was an April Fool's joke. And I will say, Martin and I put a lot of thought into doing last week's episode. And at times I was sitting, to myself during this episode, I'm like, there's no way anybody's going to fall for this stuff, because this shit we're saying is so outlandish. And yet we both are reading comments 3 days afterwards of people who were just getting pissed off at us because we said so many wrong things. And like, what kind of drugs are these guys on? I'm like, and after I left it alone for like 2 days. And then finally, after like the third day, I'm like, all right. So I went and responded to a bunch of people. I'm like, will you please look at the calendar that this posted? Because I would have thought it was pretty obvious, but I don't know. It's hilarious. Some people got the joke, which is great. But I think the hardest part for me, there were a couple of moments, Martin, you had some doozies, and I had a really hard time holding the laughter in. But in fact, just so everybody knows, we did not edit that video at all. The only thing we did was about halfway through, I paused the recording because I just had to let out a breath and just see if either one of us had to just let loose for a minute, because it was tough holding it in the beginning.
My go-to eventually was not, did you see what date this was? Mine was like, can you just go read 10 of the YouTube comments, right? Because that's what I sort of learned as an insight, right, from this, is that, okay, so you didn't get it, you were angry, blah, 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 right? You go and write a YouTube comment, and you'd think, well, if you read any of the other YouTube comments, you'd see, haha, great April Fool's joke. You guys really got me at all. But I suppose, and I thought about when I type YouTube comments, do I always read a few other YouTube comments around me? And maybe I don't, right? So there's the very real, possibility that people got angry and didn't get the joke, and as they were typing their YouTube comment, didn't see any of the other YouTube comments or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible. I mean, I know me, I read a lot of the comments just because it's my channel and that's what I do. But I can just picture some people listening for a little bit and like, the hell these guys talking about, and not reading anything else. And also too, and I didn't even think about this, it's I guess it's quite possible in some parts of the world where the whole April Fool's joke thing just doesn't exist, I guess, right?
Exactly. I noticed that. We did an April Fool's worst album, Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, on Contrarians last year. And this year I did a worst album, April Fool's, Judas Priest. And I remember seeing those comments. Certain parts of the world don't have that. And other guys have said things like, well, I was drifting in and out of the room and it was on my phone and I wasn't listening that carefully and I only caught a little bit of this and that. So if you only catch a little bit at a time, you maybe hear 3 errors instead of 35 errors over the course of 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So so that happens as well. But and as we talked about, Marco had the good idea for our Contrarians thing. After a while, after a few days, you got to put up something that says April Fool's, because then like it completely, you whiff on the idea that it was put up 7 days ago or 7 months ago, right? So that's what Marco did with our Black Sabbath one last year. There's a big old red, new title, April Fool's 2021, and the Judas Priest one has that now as well. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun, and I just love reading those comments. And then you see people go quiet when they rant at you, and then they catch on, and there's like you never hear from them again because they're so embarrassed, right?
and
yelling at you, right?
The number one comment that I saw, and again, you said it perfectly before, like there's 50 wrong things have been said, but they only really catch one, was the whole crocus are Swiss, not whatever you said.
Austrian,
yeah. And they're like, and people are like up in arms about that. All the crocus comments, people were like totally up in arms, and like, you know, and your Bad Company thing about Desolation Angels when we were talking about Badfinger.
Yeah.
There were some doozies.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you know, as outlandish as you think the stuff you're saying is, if there are people who are not familiar with these bands, even though we thought they were all pretty notable, they're not going to know the difference, right?
Yeah. I almost lost it when you said, yeah, I saw them support Coney Hatch at Madison Square Garden. It's like, and I did laugh at it, but I turned it into like a, whoa, that would have been a good.
Would have been really cool, right? Meanwhile, in no reality is Coney Hatch ever headlined Madison Square Garden. And that was not, I didn't write that one down because, you know, we had, Martin and I had this whole list of weird shit we were going to talk about. And that one I just threw out on the fly. I'm like, let me just add a little more fire to this one, right? So yeah. So today we are actually going to talk about some more album obscurities, obscure album gems that we really like a lot, that we're pretty puzzled and never quite caught on at all in the world, whether it's something old or something new. So I'll have Martin kick us off with his first selection of the day.
Okay, so my first one, I have a bit of a theme here with the idea of these don't all line up this way, but I was going to try rise to the challenge and have all 5 line up this way, where it's obscure because here's the main band and you drill down, here's the next band and here's the next band. And then once you get to the next band, it's pretty obscure. So this kind of fits that. And I hope I haven't talked about this before, but if I have, Pete and I always talk about this, it was probably in a different context, but so the root band that I don't know how obscure people think Acid Bath are, but, you know, and here's some of their weird singles. I better tilt them down to show, but that's not the band I want to talk about. So this is that great kind of, notorious for the album cover art being John Wayne Gacy or something. One of the serial killers did this kind of stuff, but the idea here is this is the album that I want to recommend as an amazing piece of work. It's almost like Agents of Oblivion. So what happened was Audie Petrie died in a car crash, and in fact both his parents were killed in this car crash as well. They got hit head on by a drunk driver, and one of the brothers lived, but it was kind of the end. They were a very close-knit band, Acid Bath, and it ended, Dax Riggs, the lead singer, who I think is just an amazing talent, and I'll get to that in a second, he went on and formed this band, Agents of Oblivion. There's one other Acid Bath guy here as well. Can't remember which guy, but it's almost like Agents of Oblivion is to Acid Bath what Life of Agony is to Typo Negative in a way. It's almost like the more accessible version, one step on from the original. I know those bands aren't fully related, but what I love about this record is it's a little more melodic and slow and grungy and accessible from Acid Bath. Acid Bath has an extra little bit of a creepiness factor. And this is just this sounds like a record that should have been huge. I think they're kind of an underrated band, but they only made the one album. And what I wanted to point out is that on this idea of drilling down, so also on the side, what happened after that is Sammy Duet went and did Goat Whore, right? He's an interesting guy. Yeah. And then, but Dax Riggs, after Agents of Oblivion, went and did this Dead Boy and the Elephant Man album, which is kind of, there was some buzz about him. It was like he did sort of a duo situation with this gal. And then Dax Riggs, he's got some solo albums, and we don't really hear from him. His little window of being a buzz act kind of came and went with Dead Boy and the Elephant Man. That was kind of that's even more non-heavy metal, and it's more like a sparse, like I say, kind of like a White Stripes sort of band. And I saw them. I think it probably they might have had 3 people on stage at that point, but it's still a very small band. I saw them supporting Wolfmother. at a show and got to meet Dax, and I had interviewed him and stuff before. But the album in the middle, between the Dead Boy and the Elephant Man and the Dax Riggs and the Acid Bath over here, the real nice sweet spot is that Agents of Oblivion album, which is an absolute sort of post-grunge hard rock psychedelic classic. I think Dax's lyrics are amazing. He's known to be a real cool sort of vocal technician, like a crooning Chris Cornell kind of a guy. And I think that album's just an absolute masterpiece. And I would say it qualifies as obscure. You know, what I've also learned from doing these obscure shows is that the level of what people think are obscure varies, but even like the you know, the bar is pretty low or high. I don't know how you describe it, but I would think a lot of people think Acid Bath's a pretty obscure band as well.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But Agents is one step further. And like I say, they only did the one album. It came and went very quickly. It was just on a small label, but it's an absolute masterpiece of this swirling, psychedelic, creative, cool stuff. Heavy metal, but elevated by the sort of magnetic personality of Dax Riggs.
Yeah, it's like and a band that's got this long, far-reaching family tree. There's plenty of obscurities to be found in that whole scenario, right? Yeah. All right. Like Martin said before, some of these you might have heard if you've been following the channel for a long time. You might have heard me mention in different contexts over the years, but you know, make no mistake, these are all obscure releases, and you know, they're gems in my opinion. So it's worth bringing them back in this particular context here. So my first one is from 1972, a debut album from a band from the U.S. on RCA Records of all things. The band is called Highway Robbery for Love or Money.
Yeah.
Only album, debut album, only album, hard rock and power trio, featuring obviously three guys: Don Francisco on drums and lead vocals, so they had a singing drummer, John Livingston Tunison IV on bass and vocals, and Michael Stevens on lead guitar and vocals. This is an easy band to recommend if your penchant for hard rock kind of falls into the late 60s, early 70s kind of era. I mean, I'm talking Early Mountain, Bang, Blood Rock, the Amboy Dukes, Cactus, certainly Grand Funk Railroad. Three guys making a lot of noise, big fat bass grooves, thunderous drums, heavy riffs, a lot of scorching, kind of like blues rock solos, loads of backing vocals on the entire album because all three guys sing. You got the drummer doing lead vocals, but the other two guys sing. Mystery Rider is the kickoff song. Really, really good track. I would recommend folks go listen to that first. It's catchy, it's heavy. 15, which is the second song, is bulldozing proto metal. Kind of think any of those bands I mentioned, maybe like Sir Lord Baltimore or something like that. Lazy Woman's also really heavy. Then you got like All I Need to Have Is You, which is kind of like psychedelic pop. It's very like late 60s sounding, which is pretty neat. Ain't Gonna Take No More, also quite heavy. I mean, overall, the music kicks ass. It's not a long album. I think it's like 35 minutes, if that. It's really heavy. The vocals they're good in spots. They're kind of average in other spots. That's probably not their strong point. I like when they do the multi-part vocal harmonies. I think that's where they really shine. But if you just love early 70s heavy rock, I'm just amazed these guys just kind of really quickly faded into obscurity because they don't sound all that much different than a lot of the other bands of the time who were doing a very similar type thing, who did catch on quite well. So it's worth finding if you can get it. I remember when I bought this probably 8 years ago on CD, and I spent a pretty penny for it because it's long out of print. You might be able to get some LPs out there in the wild. I don't know, you know, some vinyl, but definitely worth checking out. Highway Robbery for Love or Money.
Yeah, I'm racking my brain thinking, is that the band that you see on those famous black and white Black Sabbath you know, like full page. I'm picturing a full page ad from Sounds or Melody Maker or something where it's one of the support bands, right? Like Black Sabbath on tour, and there's the tour dates, and it's either Highway Robbery or Highway.
It's probably these guys, Martin.
I think it's those guys. Yeah,
probably these guys.
Cool.
They probably opened up for Sabbath on you know the Volume 4 tour or something like that here
Yeah,
in the States,
yeah.
right? When they played like the upper
Cool.
Midwest tour. I think
Yeah,
he
I
does-
remember I've heard that album years ago, but I don't really remember anything of it. So, all right. So my next choice, this guy is an absolute genius, and I'm sure I've talked about him in some respect. Snowy Shaw, and I'm not going to talk about the main Snowy Shaw album. This I rated my top album of 2015. It's an absolute masterpiece. And then, of course, he did his autobiography. Look at the size of that. This thing is so entertaining. This is an amazing, amazing autobiography. So beautifully put together. All the stories of dealing with demo. Look at that thing. Dealing with a lot of color photos and stuff in it. Beautifully arranged. You know, dealing with his playing with Therian and Dimmu Borgir and I think Cradle, King Diamond, certainly an amazing, entertaining book. But so the interesting thing is you go look at his wiki page and there's him showing him part of like 17 different projects, and most of them are him leading it. And Notre Dame is one that's amazing with Vlad the Impaler. There's a song on here that's just one of the grooviest things. He's a multi-instrumentalist, but he's one of the great drummers in the world, right? But he's also a really, really cool singer with a lot of different personalities to his voice. But we've got, Opera Diabolicus, 1614, Snowmanin. Here he is in Dream Evil. He played with Dream Evil.
Right, yeah.
Other weird stuff. But the one I wanted to point out, and so the story here is that on the topic of obscure, this is his most obscure thing, I think. Illwill Evilution. This came out in like 1996. Now, I picked it because this was one it's so frustrating because there's a song on here I've always wanted to recommend. You got to hear this song. The drum beat on this song and the catchiness is just so insane. I've played it probably 100, 200 times easily. It's the 4th track on the album. It's called Illorganization. Now, I can never play it for anybody because it was one of the rare things from the modern day that like not on Spotify. You can't even get it on YouTube. But in preparation for the show, I thought I'm going to look it up again. Someone surely must have put it on. And lo and behold, Snowy has now issued a 25th anniversary version of this album. So he's got all the tracks separated out there. But to prove it's still a pretty obscure album, I mean, it's only been up for a few days, but it had like 17 views, 12 views, and all this. It's like, there it is, though. Illorganization. I can tell Pete about this, and he or anybody who wants to go can check out that 4th track because it is an insane work of genius. So this guy is your Swedish extreme metal Devin Townsend kind of guy, or a Steven Wilson. He's that talented. He's an absolute musical genius, and it's criminal he's not bigger. But this album in total doesn't sound dated at all. It doesn't sound 25 years old, although I don't know what 25 years old sounds like in extreme metal, really. But just like the Snowy Shaw album, which is just a drop dead 10 out of 10. And anybody who wants to just be like inducted into this guy, just go watch the Krampus video or watch the what is the name of that song? The other one that's got the crazy Nachtgeist. He did like 4 videos off of this. He did all the videos himself because he's a video editor director and he plays all this stuff. But yeah, check out Nachtgeist or Krampus as videos and you'll be hooked. Absolutely. But then just check out the audio to Illorganization on here. And the rest of the album is also so varied and so complicated and well put together and catchy, but it's a little bit more of a difficult listen than the actual Snowy Shaw album. But yeah, so I picked this because it was so obscure. There was no mention of it on the internet. It's not even in it's not even in his fairly detailed Wikipedia page. But I almost play this as much as White is the New Black, but this is the masterpiece. This is the latest thing he's done, and it's a full studio album. So there you go, Illwill Evilution.
Cool. What do you think, everybody? Can we get a couple thousand views on that YouTube video for that album?
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, he definitely is like one of the most unknown really talented uber talented guys out there. And it was interesting, like reading your Merciful Fate book, where they talked a lot about him and his time spent in with King Diamond and the band. And he's probably, I don't want to say he's too talented for that band, but I think he's wasted in a band like that, I think.
Yeah.
He
can't tolerate, he has so many great ideas. He can't tolerate, like, if anything's cheesy at all or stupid. I mean, he has a sense of humor, but he's absolutely, you could tell there's a no bull factor to what he does. So in any of these bands, soon as there's anything that's bull, and or stupid or political, or we're doing this to be commercial or whatever, and it's not good because he's really knows what's good, right? He's gone, right? So that's the thing. He shouldn't be working with other people because he's such a musical genius, but he
can't just be the drummer. I mean, that's just not him. And when you look at him and you look at all he's done and what he can do, I mean, he should be like a King Diamond type of guy, right? Should, you got King Diamond, you got Snowy Shaw. And he should be doing these, big, well-known and mass-produced type of things, just like Merciful Fate or King Diamond. Yeah. I mean, he's just got that know-how and whatnot.
And the last cool thing to mention about him is that is it called Be Kind to Animals? The video for that, he's got a song called that, and that's one of his popular things. He's actually up there playing an acoustic guitar in this video, but it's about animal welfare, and there's a lot of messages in it about that. But I think it's just called Be Kind to Animals. Yeah, be kind to animals or I'll kill you. I think that's the name of the song, right? And there's a great video of that on YouTube as well.
Cool. All right, moving up a couple of years to 1976. Band from New Jersey, Mirthrander-For You, the Old Woman. I guess there's the old woman right there, right? This is a really, what's that?
76?
76.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, 76. Reissued in the early 90s on CD. But really cool American prog band. This is like as obscure as you get, a long lost gem that will instantly appeal to anyone who loves like early 70s Genesis, Yes, King Crimson, Gentle Giant, that sort of thing. Lovely, intricate keyboards. They got 2 guitar players and a trumpet player, just for you, Martin. A guy who also plays flute and bass and drums, and also the vocals are really, really solid as well. The only thing I think that stopped something like this from getting noticed back in the day is, 1976, probably about 4 years too late. I mean, there are actually a lot of really, really strong prog bands that came, especially here in the States, that kind of popped out of the woodwork in like 1975 through 1979. Because they were so heavily influenced by what was going on over in Great Britain. But by the time they got their shit together here and started putting out albums, prog is basically dead already by then. There's no million-selling prog albums come 1976, unfortunately. But yeah, the title track and the epic song For, F-O-R-F-O-U-R, are absolute gems. But the whole album is really, really good. It's really quite rocking, actually. This is a pretty, I would say, out of a lot of the 70s prog albums, especially from the States, this one's more on the harder rocking end of things. But really great keyboards, lots of great Hammond organ and Moog and all that sort of stuff. The twin guitars are going all over the place. And it's really weird to hear the trumpet kind of blast in every now and then. They don't use it too much, a little bit of flute here and there. But really, really strong. I'm trying to see if I have a picture of the guys in the band here. Show everybody. Well, I mean, here we go. I mean, they even look the part. Look at some of this stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
But one of those bands with one and done. That was it.
Wow. Neat.
Yeah. Pretty cool stuff. So this is that's what the original LP looked like.
Okay.
Yeah. Obscure as anything. Really good though. Really good. This was reissued on CD by Greg Walker over at Symphonic Records back, like I said, I think the early 90s. But if you can get it, I don't even know if it's still available. If you can get it, I highly recommend it for any early 70s prog fan. And there you have it.
Nice. Okay. Well, here's one that's definitely gonna bore Pete, so I won't go on too long about it. It's not punk, and but it's my way of cheating and being able to say some great things about One of my favorite bands of the whole post-punk era. I'm always trying to hold back on saying one of my favorite bands of all time because I've said that about too many bands. But if I were to be accurate about this and sober about this, I would put the band Magazine in my probably top 40 bands of all time. Put it that way. 40. But this isn't the band I'm going to talk about because I don't know how obscure they are. So that's their first album. This is their masterpiece, Secondhand Daylight, which, you know, I've always described them as the post-punk Pink Floyd, because this is very dark and well put together and a little proggy, but it's also a guy from the post-punk era. Of course, Howard Devoto is the genius behind this band. He was first in Buzzcocks and left them immediately. Very early on. Then they did The Correct Use of Soap, and then they did Magic Murder. What is it called? Magic Murder and the Weather. They reformed for an album called Know Thyself. That's the only thing they've done. But what was that?
I love that album cover.
Yeah, I know. That's quite catchy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very shocking sort of record as well. And then they've got some best of stuff and some live stuff. But in the spirit of this show, when I was going to sort of drill down, Howard Devoto goes off with this guy called Noko, who's had an incredible, impressive amount of credits, but all pretty rare stuff. And they did only 2 albums. One is called Beast Box. The band name is Luxuria. And then one is called Unanswerable Lust. And there's the second one. And this is almost a moral in a couple of different things. Completely oblique album covers, which aren't going to let on what kind of music it is. And you're going to flip by these in the racks and you're going to not care. You're going to see Luxuria. And instead of giving you the album title, it says Devoto and Noko. So the 2 guys, although it is a full length album. I've even got this thing, which is a 12-inch single on stamped cardboard, like really kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
So it's like die stamped. But the other moral of the story here, so the moral of the story here is we're drilling down into something more obscure than Magazine, which is arguably obscure. But the other story here is that I did a History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff podcast episode on the Lost album. So when there are these bands that you love so much, you just want more of what they do. Well, sometimes more of what they do is hidden in plain sight as the offshoot album. And here, I think Beatbox is a little bit like that. I think Beatbox sounds like a Lost Magazine album. And so I love it. And the second one, a little less. So, I mean, we're getting way up in years. So it's getting a little more kind of bright and shiny and a little bit of, more progressive use of synthesizers, a little bit more mainstream as well. But yeah, there's what the back cover looks like. But again, no one's ever gonna, unless it took me a long time to even find out that these were quote unquote lost albums in a way by a band that I worship, Magazine, because it's just all the graphics, everything about it is kind of stupid. It looks like complete synth pop, but it's not. There's still great vocals and singing and drums and guitar and all that kind of stuff on it. But so this was my way almost of cheating and saying, okay, if you consider Magazine obscure, this is the one out of all of what I just showed to go play the second Magazine album. This is, I believe, 1978, an absolute masterpiece, very dark, of, like I say, the post-punk Pink Floyd. There you go.
Yeah. I know our very own Chuck Alvarez from In the Prog Seat show is a big Magazine fan.
Oh yeah,
he always talks very highly of them.
Cool.
Yeah, it's I don't know if I've ever heard any Magazine, but I've heard enough people talk highly of them that I probably should investigate them a little bit.
Yeah, only that one. Don't go to the next 2 because they'll just sound a little bit too mainstreamy. But the first 2, but especially the second one, this is, I mean, if you like Pink Floyd Animals, this is essentially Pink Floyd Animals done, from a slightly different headspace.
Yeah, cool. I'll investigate that. All right, on to Martin's favorite type of music, instrumental fusion. right?
Wow.
Yeah. And before I forget, I think it would be a neat idea, one of these, because you brought up something pretty funny before. You talked about how, you've probably named 50 albums over the last bunch of years that are your favorite bands of all time or something like, or, whatever. We probably one of these days should do an episode where we have to force ourselves to pick our favorite 10 bands of all time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cool.
That would be kind of difficult, right?
Yeah. 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 And say why and when we've said otherwise, and and really come up with a criterion or criteria for it. Right.
Yeah. Because I think I did an episode about 2 years ago where I picked my top 30. But, I look back on that now and I'm like, yeah, that might change a little bit, or might have changed a little bit. But to get down to 10, oof, we'll see. We'll work on that. We'll talk about it. 2018, I'm going to go fairly recently. So this is a very, very cool band that needs to be known by a lot of people. The band is called the Koch Marshall Trio, and Toby Arrives is the album. This is the debut album from this trio. This is basically a killer guitar, Hammond organ, drums power trio. Consisting of Greg Koch on guitar. Now, Greg is probably very well known to guitar players, but to like anybody who's not a musician, not a guitar player, doesn't really follow the guitar scene, probably have never heard of this guy before. He is an absolutely brilliant, totally original guitar player. He's been featured on Years, Wildwood Guitars out of Colorado. They've got a YouTube channel and they do lots of gear reviews and things like that of guitars and equipment and stuff. And he's been a kind of a fixture on their channel for many, many years. He also has got his own YouTube channel. He's done lots of gigging and teaching and all that kind of stuff. So his son Dylan is on drums, and the guy who the album title Toby Arrives is named after is Tony Lee Marshall on Hammond B3 organ. This is just absolutely intense instrumental music, which fuses kind of like funk and blues and a little bits of jazz and classic rock into this really cool, very accessible, very groovy hybrid that is just absolutely spectacular, start to finish. I mean, there's plenty of tight grooves. There's lots of soloing, but it's not excessive. The songs are instantly memorable. Think of kind of like a collision of if all these bands decided to ditch the vocals and just play instrumental music. Little Feat, ZZ Top, Deep Purple, and Jeff Beck. It's kind of what you get here. I even think you would like some of this, Martin, because it's that groovy and that much fun. And I think anybody who's into fusion music would just absolutely love this. For folks watching, go out and listen, even you, Martin, go and listen to a song called Heed the Boogaloo.
Okay.
Like Boogaloo, like Boogie Woogie, right? Heed the Boogaloo. Let's Get Sinister is another great song. Toby Arrives, the title track, is great. And Funk Meat is really good. It's just, and Greg's got this really weird guitar style. He mainly plays Telecasters, but he just gets all these kind of really cool, weird noises and things. And his guitar style is very whimsical, if that makes any sense at all. The guy can shred, but he's more about just kind of like all these tones and colors and these cool little riffs that, you're like, God, how did he come up with that type of thing? And the songs, like I said, are full of groove, really memorable. And they bring all those different elements together for this kind of new sound. That's something really, really, really cool. So yeah, I totally recommend this. Probably most people here have never heard this before. I think I reviewed this when it first came out back in 2018. So that's already 4 years ago, but definitely check it out if you haven't already. This deserves to be heard by everybody who loves great instrumental music or just good music in general.
I had to write down the name of the band again because it has one of those stupid band titles that you're never going to remember.
I know.
You just heard it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it totally is. Yeah. Koch is how Greg spells his last name. Marshall Trio. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to play Heed the Boogaloo, but you got to play Feed the Enemy off of this magazine album.
Feed the Enemy. All right. I'm writing that down.
All right. Okay. So my next one, again, this is one that maybe in some context I've talked about this band, and I'm actually taking this suggestion from a YouTube comment that mentioned these guys on probably the first episode. But I'm going with NoMeansNo from Victoria, BC. This is their classic album from 1989, Wrong. But they made a pile of CDs over the years. They started back in 1979, and they're all very difficultly front covered and titled, just to make you that's, and then yeah, here they're called Mr. Right and Mr. Wrong. That's the one I'm going to talk about. But so every one of them almost like actively asks you not to buy this CD because you're just trying to figure out what the heck, what is any of this all about, right? Is it some stupid punk single? Is it like, look at this, kill everyone now, right? So what they are, I mean, you know, the trope, the way people describe them in short form is absolutely true. They're the punk rock Rush, right? So they're this post-punk terrorist music, noisy, fast, complicated music with a great drummer. And so it reminds you of Rush if they were like, just did a bunch of Angel Dust or something, right? And then made a record, right? But I wanted to highlight their basically their last great proper album, All Roads Lead to Ausfahrt. That's the name of the album, right? And absolute genius, these guys. You know, two brothers, and they've had various guitars over the year, but John and Rob Wright. They're a trio, and lyrically they just take you into a whole strange world of really, you know, dark cynicism. It's almost a little bit like Henry Rollins and even some of the writers Henry had on his 21361 or whatever it is publishing label. I remember buying all those at one point, but so it's really dark and cynical and profane at times, and super poetic lyrics. There's a song, just the lyrics alone on this are absolutely genius, as is the music. Our Town on One. The song Our Town just reads like an amazing bank of, you know, gorgeous theater from 1930 or something. Just the way the words all fit together, and it's kind of creepy about a town that's futuristic or it's not, and it's a really incredible bank of lyrics. But there's lots on here as well. They've now retired. They were a huge cult band in terms of they could just tour and tour and tour. Europe loved them. It was always packed venues, but they were always small venues. And they finally, you know, after years of frustration of not getting huge, but just being so beloved, retired. A buddy of mine's actually working on a book by them. I had thought of doing one on them at one point as well. Even Sam Dunn at Banger Films had talked about, because he's from Victoria and he knew those guys. He talked about one day semi-seriously on doing a documentary on them. They're just that good. Again, they're almost like in that Snowy Shaw, Devin Townsend, Stephen Wilson thing, although it's not a cult of one guy, but they're just this super highly critically acclaimed band that can be very, very noisy and off-putting at times, but the songs that you love to death to your grave. But there's large swaths of songs that are just, again, they seem like they're actively repelling their fans away to not come listen to, you know, they'll do some 10-minute noisy jam song and then some other stuff in there that's much more accessible. But yeah, funny band that way. To find the gems is kind of hard, but again, go back to Our Town on this one, or Graveyard Shift to check that out. But yeah, if you just went and played this whole catalog, it might in various ways just repel you, but there are so many amazing genius gems. There you go. No Means No. Oh, and just to mention, I almost went with the Offshoot situation because they do this Hanson Brothers thing, which is kind of like hockey punk rock. And if you look at this one, that's an homage to the Ramones live album, right? With that type style up there. But yeah, so they do Offshoot stuff as well, and I could have done that, but no, I figured No Means No is obscure enough just to talk about No Means No. All right, I'm done.
A catalog that will instantly repel me. All right.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go some local guys here from an album from guys from Brooklyn, New York. Came out in 2018. I've been preaching about these guys on seatranquility.org since they first came out. I love them to death. Nobody knows who they are. The band is called The Golden Grass. Maybe some of you who have been following me for years and years have heard me mention these guys and talk highly about them. The album is called Absolutely. This album was actually out on Listenable Records, which is a pretty small little like metal label, kind of a strange label for these guys because they're not a metal band. Everybody knows how much I love like retro 70s style hard rock, right? And these guys have a lot to do with that, as well as like the 60s psychedelic scene. This is their third album. I mean, if you love accessible 70s style psychedelic hard rock with a dash of like pop hooks like the Beatles or the Stones or something like that, you'll love these guys. Think kind of like you mentioned Wolfmother earlier, which is very cool. You got to see them actually. Think of Wolfmother, but maybe with a little more pop funk and psychedelia thrown in. Because they do, Wolfmother gets those really kind of groovalicious 70s style heavy rock tones going really well. These guys do as well. You just imagine like Blue Cheer and the James Gang, Grand Funk, Black Sabbath, Mountain, the Allman Brothers, and Budgie, because they do a little bit of jamming from time to time, which reminds me of the Allman Brothers. And they can also boogie like Status Quo at times, which is kind of weird. But man, they can also crank out an anthem just like Boston or maybe like 70s Kiss or something like that. There's grooves everywhere on this album, loads of tasty guitar riffs. Never You Mind is a great song. Definitely go check that one out. Catch Your Eye is really good. Begging the Question, also really, really good. And if you want to hear the jammy side to them a little bit, go check out Out on the Road, which is like, I don't know, 8 or 9 minutes or something like that, and lets them stretch out a little bit. Can't Miss Band. They got the look too. I mean, they just look like really cool guys. Definitely don't look like guys from Brooklyn that I know, but yeah, they have the spirit of, and then these are all fairly young guys too, but they've got the spirit of like, 1968 through 1972 down really, really pat. And the good thing, their music is a lot of fun. It rocks hard, but it's a lot of fun. It's catchy. It's accessible. I mean, these guys in a perfect world should be superstars. So
neat. Cool. Yeah, love the cover as well.
All
right, so my last one, I'll make this a little shorter because I feel like I've been rambling on a lot. Sweeney Todd, If Wishes Were Horses. I'm not sure if I've talked about this before, and this also would fit in a category of everything I've talked about so far. I love to death, and their masterpieces, and I've played them hundreds of times. This is just a really good album that I haven't played hundreds of times. I've maybe played it 40 times or whatever, but it's a neat story. So this band, a Canadian band, they started with this album and had a #1 Canadian hit with Roxy Roller. Nick Gilder was the leader of the band. It's a pretty heavy album. It's glammy, it's heavy. It's more like heavy David Bowie or heavy glam kind of thing. There's what the band looked like on the back. Just classic, great 70s shot, right?
I love that. Yeah.
They are rocking out. They only made 2 albums, so that's the one with Nick Gilder singing. But the If Wishes Were Horses album from 1977, that one was 76. This is their second and last album, and it's kind of a neat story because that there is Bryan Adams at 16 years old. So he's the lead singer of the band, 16 years old.
Wow.
And he's only with the band for this one album. And this one is actually even a little heavier than the first one. It's well recorded. It's made at Little Mountain Studios. And the assistant engineers are Bob Rock and Roger Monk. So this is Bob Rock even before he had the band The Payolas and then went on to be a big producer. But look at these band shots in the gatefold.
Nice.
So there's your Bryan Adams, 16.
I'm not used to seeing him with all that hair, man. That's like,
yeah. So this is a little bit like the Billy Joel in Attila Hun story in a way, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, how heavy was the Bruce Springsteen Steel River or whatever album, but
some of it's rocking.
Yeah. But this is pretty heavy. And again, it reminds me of Heavy Sparks, when Sparks was kind of a heavy band. It reminds me of Heavy Bowie. It reminds me a lot of Queen at times. There's a lot of Queen to it. There's some cabaret-ish kind of stuff, but there's a lot of even New England. There's a lot of like pomp rock to it. So this is a very entertaining album that I would recommend to people if you like everything we just said in sort of a nutshell. a little bit of the post glam, the little, the pilot situation, City Boy, I suppose there's a bit of that to it as well. But yeah, very, very, one of the funny things here is at the ends of the songs, after the end of each side, it says side 1 playing, and then it gives you the total 1828, side 2 playing 1820. Well, look at that. They're both 1828. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, good album. They only made 2 albums. Definitely pretty obscure, especially if you're from the States. They were on London. They're both on London. But yeah, good, good heavy hard rocking, proggy, poppy, glammy stuff. If you like that stuff, Sweeney Todd.
That sounds right up my alley. I'm gonna have to immediately investigate those. Yeah, I've heard you mention them a time or two, and they made no impact here in the States, but I think I would probably love that, both of those. So I got to go check into those. Yeah. Cool. All right, my final one for today from 1971. We'll start in the early 70s. We're going back, finishing up in the early 70s. So this is a band, another kind of one and done band who were on Prophecy Records, which was distributed by Atco Atlantic at the time. And I'm mystified that this band were not huge. From LA, the band was called Shotgun Limited, and the album is titled Shotgun Limited. Kind of a God, they had a bunch of members. Were they 1, 2, 3, 4? I don't know, like 7 or 8 members, 6 members, something like that. There they are right there. 2 guitar players, really strong vocals. Vocals, in fact, remind me, in some songs, they have like this kind of multi-part harmony thing going on, like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. In other parts, kind of sounds like Fred Turner's gruff vocals and Bachman Turner Overdrive. So it's kind of like a nice yin and yang type of thing going on. Yeah. But man, this is really great early 70s heavy blues rock. Like I said, it's the only album they ever did. You got Against the Wall, which is heavy, kind of doomy. You got Number 2, which is kind of complicated and a little proggy in spots. If you look these guys up, they call them like heavy prog, but I wouldn't say this is really a prog album. To me, this is more like a really good heavy rock, or early heavy hard blues rock or something like that. On Top of You, good hard rocking tune, lots of nice crunchy arrangements. Like I said, vocal harmonies and spots are really good. Others, it reminds me so much of BTO, whereas you have the 2 vocalists who have completely different vocal styles, and depending on who's singing is kind of the direction that the song goes as well. Some nice organ on a couple tracks, which give that kind of little Deep Purple feel, I think. But it's just an excellent album. Undiscovered, unknown gem, kind of like one and done, been forgotten in the annals of rock history album. To me, this is one of like my great obscure discoveries of like the last decade when I fell into this one, and it's just absolutely amazing. And it's something if you love early 70s heavy rock stuff, you got to hear this. This band should have been really something, and unfortunately they weren't. Oh yeah, I definitely have heard it. Can't remember a lick of it. Don't remember anything about it, but I think I owned it. Yeah, I think you would dig it, Martin. It's a really good strong album. A lot of variety on it too. Cool. So nice, good. There you go. Yeah. So there you have it, everybody. 10 more obscure album gems from the vaults. Well, sort of, I guess, our vaults. I don't know, whatever. But definitely some stuff worth checking out. I got some stuff, some homework to do on this one. So Martin's threw a couple at me that I'm really interested to check out and see. So before we go, Martin, I know you got lots going on with Contrarians and the podcast and books coming in. So what's new over in your? Yeah, we had a Contrarians go up that I wasn't part of, where they ranked their top 3 Cure albums, and they just went to town on it. I mean, they really knew their Cure, so that was good. My podcast, I did a History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. The last one was called Bands with Angry Fans. So I did that one. Previous to that was Pub Rock. I think the next one, because I went on John Gaffney's Lair of the Alchemist, and we did a show on honorary new wave of British heavy metal, which I've done 2 different episodes of my podcast on, but that inspired me because of the flame wars going on. I don't know if people say flame wars anymore, but anyways, on Facebook about, there's no new wave of British heavy metal sound. So I think the next podcast I'm going to do is there a new wave of British heavy metal sound? I'm going to debate that one. Otherwise, books, martinpopoff.com. There's the visual biographies. The latest one is the Dio book, Dream Evil, Dio in the 80s. Cool. Sounds good. So what do we got going on here on the channel? So tomorrow is the UK Connection with Simon Bray, Stephen Reed, and myself, where we talk about some notable concert experiences from the years 2000 to 2004. That's coming up tomorrow. And then Sunday, we've got album homework assignment with another rematch show. We've got Rich Catino and Jamie Laszlo going head to head once again. Very entertaining episodes, so don't miss that. And then Monday, we've got the return of the Hudson Valley Squares after a couple of weeks off due to a variety of reasons, most of which have to do with myself. But that'll be coming back on Monday, where we will once again attempt to tackle the whole 1992 album war between Alice in Chains, Dirt, and Danzig 3. So that's coming up on Monday. So stay tuned for that. And lots more stuff here on the channel. This is on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. But of course, we're here all together all the damn time on YouTube. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye.